this could definitely trigger a big pump. You can't even really call that a correction. Can dear Gary just act independently and do whatever he wants, make decisions and say, yeah, we're going to appeal? At this point, first of all, a happy new year. I hope you started off well, started off relaxed, and now, of course, 2025 is going to be our year of years. But is that really the case? And that's why we're diving right into a spicy topic. On January 15th, Ripple at nearly 480. Is that realistic? Is that feasible? Why January 15th specifically? What other factors come into play? And at the end of the video, I also have a potentially pretty exciting coin tip that fits perfectly into the current situation. So I would say let's dive right in. New Year's resolutions and all that, so no more coffee, just water from now on. We'll see each other after the intro. But before we get to XRP, let's take a look at the general factors that are crucial this week. Yeah, you might be thinking, I just nursed a hangover yesterday, and now here we are again with numbers that are especially relevant for Bitcoin. Because we all know that what Bitcoin does, altcoins usually do in a more pronounced way. And there we have two factors. On one hand, today we have the initial claims for unemployment benefits, which is obviously an indicator of how much liquid capital is available in the US that could potentially flow into risk assets like crypto in general. But let's move straight on to the ISM numbers for tomorrow. For everyone wondering, what is that now? That's the Purchasing Managers Index. So, that's a survey that is supposed to provide insight into how the economic development will continue in the coming months. And at this point, a big thank you once again. It's indescribable how this channel has grown in the last few weeks. Even though Bitcoin didn't have a year-end rally, this channel definitely did. We're already well over 8K subscribers. Thanks for that. Without you, this channel would be nothing. I've also launched a special uptrend trading service where you get coin tips, SOS, EOS, and where you receive current news like market updates right in the morning, so you know how things might go down in trading. And also some other bonuses that I've negotiated with exchanges, with projects, etc. I managed to get out. So if you're not a member yet, there are already over 200 subscribers. Check the description, you can join there. I've just noticed that many of those who watch the videos are still not subscribed. So if you count yourself among them, feel free to hit that button. Feel free to activate the bell so you don't miss any important info. And now that's enough about that. Unless, of course, you like the video, then feel free to leave a like. It helps boost the algorithm. But now let's move on to Ripple. Yeah, and what can you say at this point? Basically, everything hinges on the ruling in the lawsuit between Ripple and the SEC. Anyone can make wild predictions out there. Since December 2. But basically, everything hinges on the ruling in the Ripple versus SEC case. And no one can foresee that. So we're going to pull out a few indicators here because the 15th of January is also in the running. But in the end, there are so many prophets out there who are saying all sorts of wild things. And in the end, ever since December 22, 2020, there's been a bit of a break on things. December 2020, there was a bit of a break on things. And I agree with that. In the last video, there was a comment along the lines of, hey, the SEC really messed up. The last bull run for us. And I agree because the SEC has really put the brakes on a lot. It's not just Ripple that's the troubled party. There have been other projects as well, but it's definitely one of the projects that have been held back. By the way, thank you so much. Feel free to check out this video. There were a lot of cool comments like, hey, it's great that you're talking about your mistakes too. Yeah, I think that's right. So when it comes to investing, I will make mistakes for the rest of my life. That's just how it is. Everyone does it. The problem is that way too few of these YouTube prophets out there talk about it. They only talk about how amazing they are and everything they've done right and how many millions or billions they've moved around. Yeah, and in the end, often that's not true at all. And I thought, before I do any kind of year in review, I should talk about the mistakes I've made and what you can learn from them. So at this point, thanks again for all the comments. Feel free to click here for the video. But let's go back to that. Let's take a look at how the lawsuit went, shall we? So a brief history on that. So we had back in December in 2020, the first lawsuit came from the SEC, and then it went on for quite a while until July 2023, when District Judge Torres issued a ruling and stated that XRP is not inherently a security. However, there was a fine of $125 million. Now, it should be noted that this is significantly less than what the SEC would have liked, as they wanted $1.3 billion. Well, then everything was at a standstill. But what exactly is this whole lawsuit about? So basically, we're talking about a precedent that clearly affects not just Ripple in any way, but the entire crypto space. As you just saw at the beginning on the 22nd, in 2020, the SEC filed the lawsuit. Yeah, the charges, which were then also brought against other projects quite frequently afterward, involve illegal trading of securities. You could argue whether this is a personal feud of Gary Gensler against the entire cosmos, or if there's any rational thinking involved. But okay, that issue will be resolved soon. Let's take a look at how Gary can still make any moves by January 15th. The lawsuit came in and then XRP was dumped pretty hard. Sure, such a dispute could also have completely different fatal consequences. In any case, it all went back and forth a bit until finally U.S. District Judge Analisa Torres issued a ruling in July. Issued a ruling in 2023? Well, she was recently criticized for that because people said, wait a minute, there needs to be more protection for institutional investors, but not for retail investors. That makes no sense at all. Okay, so be it. However, according to this ruling, it was already stated that XRP is not a security by nature. That's already pretty good, especially regarding the fine. So the fine was set at $125 million, while the SEC wanted $1.3 billion. So all in all, Ripple has counted this whole thing as a victory. You can just leave it at that. Of course, that was not all, because on October, in 2024, more than a year later, the SEC announced, no, we're appealing this. That's just not how it works. At this point, it's worth mentioning that XRP has hired some pretty expensive and hopefully good lawyers. Well, I read something about $1,000 an hour or something like that, really big. In any case, it was then said that Ripple is also appealing and has challenged certain parts of Torres's decision. And now it gets exciting because we are at a turning point and we don't have much time left, at least for the SEC. Because on January 15th, the deadline for the SEC to appeal expires, and if nothing happens, the court has already announced that there will be no further extensions. But I've been wondering the whole time, can dear Gary just act independently and do whatever he wants, make decisions and say, we're appealing? No, he can't, because Gary Gensler is just the chairman. But that still means there are other commissioners who make decisions together with him, and he might not like that at all, because the odds for crypto aren't looking too bad that nothing will happen until January 15th. In 2001, I just want to report from the most official sources, so I've gone to the SEC's website, and if you scroll down here, you'll first see all the commissioners, including who held the chairmanship under the respective presidents. And if we scroll all the way down here, we can see there are two remnants from the Trump administration, and from the second term, there are three more. And now let's take a look at this step by step. So we start here on December 18th when the news came out that Commissioner Crenshaw is also stepping down. That's quite optimistic for crypto. Why? Because the good lady, for example, opposed the approval of the Bitcoin spot ETFs. Not so cool at all, but in the end, there was nothing anyone could do about it. Let's move on right away. Yeah, Gary Gensler, we probably don't need to say much about him. We could almost just write in the end date, starting from the 20th. Jan, we say goodbye and let's move on right away. This gentleman is quite crypto-friendly, so there's nothing to suggest that he shouldn't continue in office in any way. I can imagine that well. And overall, The mood is quite positive, as he has also expressed a lot of criticism about what's going on at the SEC regarding crypto. So that's already pretty positive. Then we have another candidate who will also be stepping down, and that has already been announced. A critical voice against crypto, definitely, but not for much longer. And then we finally come to the crypto mom. The crypto mom, some of you might know her. She is quite sympathetic to the topic of crypto, very open-minded, and also works here as a detective. And so the question now is, quite frankly, is it realistic that there will actually be an appeal in some form in any way? So an objection from the SEC by January 15th. I'm curious about your opinion, so go ahead and write it in the comments. But with the commissioners and the people who have already said we're going to be away for a few days, it's pretty questionable whether anything will come of it. And now let's get to the chart analysis. So there are all sorts of theories, as I mentioned at the beginning, and you have to be a bit careful because a lot of it, or rather everything, feels like it's currently based on chart analyses. So here we have, for example, Fibonacci levels in play. Then there are bullish signals like bull flags, etc. And so we would be, for example, according to this post, it could easily be at 15 done. If on January 15th there's movement and you hear, hey, the SEC isn't doing anything anymore, everything is being left as is, that could definitely trigger a big pump. Can, doesn't have to. If it goes the other way around, and you definitely can't foresee that in the chart, it's basically a more or less black swan event. The SEC is filing the appeal on January 14th. At 11:59 p.m., they file the appeal. Well, then it could also go the other way. So please keep that in mind. It's a 50-50 chance, especially after this. So we initially had an increase of several 100%, nearly 450%, just simply marked here. But then we had a pullback from the top of about, well, right now it's around 18. Okay, so that's perfectly fine. Strictly speaking, you can't even call it a correction when it goes up hundreds of percent and down almost 20%. Okay, good morning. And you can see that there's still an uptrend here. What you also notice is that the overall volume has definitely decreased. But you can also see that probably due to the volatility, all those short positions have disappeared again, because no one really knows what's happening right now. And that shows, all in all, that we have a very clear bottom formation here. That means the volume is there and there's definitely substance. And now we just have to wait and see what will happen. But how do we come to this thesis? 474 on January 15th. Well, I also read up on that, and I deliberately say thesis because it is a thesis. No one can know for sure. When the lawsuit was filed, which must have been around here, we had a price drop of about 55. Now, opinions are divided. Some are jumping from 50%, some from 60%. That's where opinions differ. Some are jumping from 50%, some from 60%. That's why I took the golden mean, definitely a 55% price drop. And if we could assume that the appeal is void, that the entire legal dispute is void, then you could basically add that to the current value. Yes, you could definitely say that, but please don't forget that since 2020, there are certainly a lot more tokens on the market. So that means, sure, the space itself has also grown, but whether you can really calculate that precisely against it, oh, I don't really know. I think there are completely different geopolitical factors at play. There are more tokens on the market and also more investors. So let's just say it's a thesis, and in my opinion, it will remain a thesis. At this point, I'm really curious. Let's discuss it openly. It could definitely happen. So write in the comments what you think about it. Before we get to the coin tip that fits perfectly into the current times, are you all excited? I still have some current news, which should be from yesterday, from Stuart Alderoty, who is the Chief Legal Officer of Ripple. He definitely worked on New Year's Eve and passed on 6 key principles to the SEC. Worked out. And right there, how is it going to continue with Ripple? How could one proceed from here? So you can read this in detail as well. But I find it interesting what he's putting out there and also what he's conveying to the SEC, saying, hey, folks, think about securities transactions, proposals, and so on before anything leaks out. Overall, I think it's pretty cool. You can tell that they're also thinking a bit about the future and maybe even giving some hints like whether the SEC might actually lose face if they were to push forward any further. But now let's take a look at the coin tip. There's Donald, and by the way, you can even have a conversation with him, but I'll get to that in a moment. Because clearly meme coins are popping up everywhere, and right now with Donald Trump's inauguration, that could definitely be an indicator where one of these things gains some serious momentum. Let's remember back to the presidential election. It was exactly the same, where some meme coins laid down hundreds, thousands of X just because they were playing on that very topic. But now let's move on directly. So what I find really interesting is that we don't have a pre-sale or anything like that. The thing is listed, you can see that right here. I'll also show you the chart, which definitely looks healthy. In the end, what is this all about? So you have the opportunity to ask Donald Trump, as the next AI superstar and crypto influencer, any questions you might have. Yes, you heard that right. I'll add to that, it hasn't quite worked for me yet, so I'll have to figure out exactly how it works. You can definitely ask him directly, both about X and on Telegram, and you can throw him a question or two. So, 1 to 2, for example, to ask whether he thinks the Ripple court case will finally be put to rest on January 15th. The next question would have been whether he would like to go have a beer with Gary Gensler, since he'll have a lot of time on his hands in retirement. But anyway, here you can see that there are various options you can pursue. In the end, it's mainly the narrative of meme coins. It's fun, and there might be good pump involved, because I'll show you the chart in a moment, which is quite something. You can also see the roadmap divided into different phases here. Of course, just take everything with a bit of humor, and I find things like this quite interesting. Sure, it's full-on gambling, so I want to say right here, this is not investment advice in any form. Do your own research, that's important. But all in all, such events can definitely trigger some momentum. And we're also talking about sex listings that are supposed to come and so on and so forth. And by the way, how can you buy now? All this information, let me first show you the chart, which I find pretty cool. You have this big green candle going up. And yes, there was a sell-off, but it never dropped to the level it launched at. So you definitely can't talk about pump and dump here. Instead, you have a solid sideways movement. What I find pretty cool at this point is that there's no diluted market cap. All tokens are in circulation. And I think that's really strong about this whole thing, because you have the huge advantage of being able to say, okay, there can't be any major inflation or staging or whatever coming in. This thing is completely based on supply and demand. Of course, no one knows what will happen when he takes office. And maybe some of those who invested early will realize profits here, or maybe they won't. Perhaps they've already sold, you just don't know. But all in all, this could definitely trigger a significant boost, and you don't have that pump and dump factor here, which I always find very important. You can buy the whole thing, so here you can also see the contract address. My tip here is always to use the contract address to find the tokens accordingly. This whole thing runs on Solana, and you can, for example, buy on Radium, and we're just going to do that together now and simply enter the contract address here. That was just the wrong way around, but you know what I mean. And then you have the corresponding chart here, and you can, for example, swap USDT, the corresponding tokens, and that's it. Well, that's how it should be. At this point, I can always give you the tip to look for press releases to see how strong the project is in terms of marketing. You can definitely find quite a bit of information. I've picked out a few that are quite current and are being reported on. And of course, always check out X. What I find cool is that, Sure, it's still a small community, but it's built organically, so there's nothing with any exaggerated values. You can just scroll through and see how professionally everything is set up. Look, there's also a Donald Santa, and here you definitely have a lot of movement going on. It can definitely still grow, so everyone should be aware of that. There is definitely activity happening. 2001, and by the way, also on Telegram. And what I've never seen so strongly in this form is that certain bots have also been removed. That's very positive for me because you can see, okay, 3,200 members in the Telegram group isn't that big yet. There's potential there. And there you can ask your questions. I'm just waiting to see when my question comes up. We're doing this 2001 times. I'm turning the volume up on purpose.
Strategy to please today in order.
So you can chat with the AI Donald and ask questions and you'll get answers and so on. As I said, when I get my answer, I'll be happy to post it. But I find it quite funny, and now we just have to wait and see how the movement reacts. Feel free to write in the comments if you want me to go more into the topic of memes, that narrative. I'd be happy to do that because we haven't talked about it in a long time. However, this could also become quite exciting for an alt season. That should be it for now. So I'm curious about your opinion. Feel free to write that in the comments. And otherwise, if the exchange is supposed to continue in our Telegram group, in the community group, it's all a bit easier there. Check the description, there's the link. Otherwise, I can only give you the tip to check out this video 2001. Super strong content, and this could definitely take you further. See you in the next video. Until then, all the best.